Hi, so my name is Siobhan Hamon and I am a medical scientist working in the clinical biochemistry lab at GUH University Hospital. I'm here to talk to you today about what I've done since graduation and how the course has helped me get me there basically. So just a little bit of background. So I studied here in GMIT between 2010 and 2014. I then did my 6-month clinical placement at GUH University Hospital between 2012 and 2013. And then in 2014, I completed my final year project in the clinical biochemistry lab, where I looked at the analysis of beta-hydroxybutyrate. So then looking at what I've done since graduation. So in March 2015, I initially took up a medical laboratory aide post. Then luckily 1 month later, a medical scientist position became available, which I subsequently took up. And then after 9 months of training and rotation around the laboratory, I became a member of the on-call roster. So then, September of 2015, the same year, I began my 2-year Masters in Biomedical Science through the University of Ulster. So I'm in the 2nd year of it at the moment. It is a part-time Masters online, so that way I'm able to work full-time and still do on-call while gaining some qualifications as well. So then looking at my current role at the moment as a medical scientist, I kind of break it down into 3 parts, looking at the pre-analysis of samples, the analysis of samples, and then the post-analysis of samples. So looking at the pre-analysis, so basically when you get a form and a sample down, you want to see, do the patient's demographics match the form and the sample? As well as that then, do you have the correct specimen type in front of you? Do you need an EDTA? Do you need a fluoride oxalate? Do you need a serum? Are they correct specimen types for the test you're about to perform? As well as that then, you'll be looking at the time of the sample. Has it arrived down to the lab on time? Certain tests are time specific. Some need to be arrived down to the lab within 15 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, etc., etc. As well as that, in terms of pre-analysis of samples, we have different instrumentation in the labs. So GUH University Hospital in biochemistry is quite busy. So we have lots of instrumentation and analyzers to help us get through all the samples. So operating the analyzers as well is part of some of the pre-analytics. So we have an MPA which centrifuges our samples, decaps the samples, aliquots the samples, labels them, recaps them again, and archives them for us as well. So running these analyzers as well is also part of our pre-analytics. So then looking at the actual analysis of samples, so when you're analysing samples on these analyzers, you need to be running frequent QC to make sure that your different assays are in control basically. As well as that, part of running the analysis of these samples is looking at your reagents. Do you have enough reagents on board? Do you need to make some more reagents up? Are they stable? Have they expired? And once these checks are in place, you're happy to run your samples on the analyzers. So then looking at the post-analysis of samples, you're talking about validation and authorization. So in terms of validation, are the results you're producing, are they precise, are they accurate? If a result is high or low, it might have had to repeat itself. Are the results reproducible? In terms of authorization then, you'll have a set of results in front of you, and you can compare them to the patient's history. Do they correlate with the patient's history? Are you satisfied that these results belong to that patient? Has the patient deteriorated? Do I need to contact somebody, a doctor, a nurse, or somebody on that team? As well as that is the sample contaminated? Has it been contaminated with EDTA? Has drip arm occurred? And being able to recognise that and respond appropriately. Just having a quick little overview as to maybe why you might decide to do a Masters in Biomedical Science. So once you've all finished your course here in medical science, you're qualified then to become a medical scientist. If that's the career path you decide to choose and you want to further your progression in the medical science career, the next step then is a senior medical scientist, which you do require a master's for. After that then you're looking at chief medical scientist and then laboratory manager. So then in terms of how GMIT has prepared me for my academics and the job I'm doing at the moment. So the degree here that I did prepared me extremely well for the Masters I'm doing at the moment. In terms of the topics I've covered, the modules I've covered, there was hardly anything new in the Masters I'm doing at the moment that I hadn't touched upon while doing the degree here. Like last year, the subjects I would have done would have been clinical chemistry, DNA technology, things I'd studied here in GMIT. This semester I'm looking at quality management, statistics, once again all topics I have covered here in GMIT. So the degree here does prepare us extremely well for doing a Masters. So then looking as well practically how we're prepared here as well. So as we all know, we do many hours of laboratory work here in the lab. And it's great exposure to practice all the techniques that we're going to be using in the laboratory. Doing your pipetting, dilutions. And while these might sound like basic things, you won't be taught these once you go and work in a lab. They're things you're expected to know how to do once you get in there. So use the time you have now to practice all these different techniques. Then looking at presentations and posters and reports, once again, these are skills you might feel, oh, I won't use these once I leave college. That isn't the case. If you work in a laboratory, you'll be doing validations, you'll be doing audits, and you will be expected to compose a report afterwards, to present it to your colleagues, and maybe even make a poster and bring it to LabCon or Biomedica. So, these are practical skills that you will be using. So it's great that GMIT prepares us to, it forces us to do these skills so we can use them outside after the degree. And then lastly, I have here clinical placement and final year project. They are in capital letters for a reason. I think we are extraordinarily lucky that we have the clinical placement and final year project integrated into the course. It's fantastic that some of the courses don't have work placement included. So I would have done my placement in Galway University Hospital, my project in biochemistry, and that's where I'm working now. And the same can be said for many of my colleagues who have done their projects and placement in different colleges or different hospitals, and that is where they're working now. So I think it's a great opportunity that we have doing the placement, doing the project, and it does help us potentially gain a job afterwards too. So then I'm looking at advice to my student self: ask more questions. The lecturers do not bite. I've survived 4 years here, so definitely ask more questions. Use the services that are available to you as well. I don't think I used the library services properly until I was in 4th year. They do seminars on EndNote and different softwares as well. There's the IT department downstairs. You've got the library, the study rooms upstairs as well. Don't use those. Use them from 1st year. I think had I availed these services from 1st year, not just in 4th year, some of the tasks I would given I might have found easier to do. And then lastly, get the basics right. I know I've said that already, but your pipetting, your dilutions, these are things that you have time to practice them now. Your terminology, accuracy, precision, sensitivity, specificity. Get them right now, because these are words that are being used day to day in the lab, and you don't want to get them mixed up or not know what they mean. So practice them now, get them right now, basically. So thank you, and is there any questions?
Thanks very much, Siobhan. Is there anything that anybody, Darren, would like to ask?
Just on the masters that you did over there.
Yeah.
So you did it over 2 years.
Yeah.
You find it difficult doing the masters over 2 years when you're working as well, or?
It's tough going, but I think they realise that, I think they've designed it that you should be working while doing it, so that the work you're getting is proportionate to someone who is working full time. So yeah, it is tough going for sure, but it is manageable.
Anybody else have anything that you'd like to ask Siobhan about the lab, or? Yeah.
Do you think taking on the lab aid job helped you get the full-time job, or?
Yeah, I do think it was my foot in the door, I suppose. So that when the medical scientist position came up, they thought of me because I was there, basically. I do have colleagues as well who started off as lab aides and then progressed into medical scientists once the positions became available.
Yeah, that is something I suppose we've seen that with a lot of graduates. Lab aides, particularly maybe when you're coming to the end of your 4th year project, if you're in a hospital coming into the summer, they may get funding for a lab aide position.
Yeah.
Or some of the 3rd years guys, when you come to the end of your placement, sometimes the placement hospital might offer you a lab aide position. If again it's resources usually might be the limiting factor there, but it is experience, and I suppose you can't beat that kind of experience. It's a lab aide position, it's not a medical scientist position, but it still is some experience in the hospital. So if that's what you're interested in.
Yeah, I definitely had classmates who would have volunteered even a few hours a week, and once again they were remembered when positions were coming up and things.
Yeah. So when I keep going on about solutions, remember what Siobhan said. The second year that you have experience.
Siobhan, can I just ask, just based on that, what Mary was saying about the practical work that you do here, we've just done a visit to the hospital where we met you last week with the 1st years, and it's the 2nd year of doing it. And one of the comments from 1st years, because they haven't seen, I guess, any of the medical science disciplines yet, they only get a flavour for it in semester 2, and then they'll study them in year 2. Feedback or comments I got last year, and I heard again this year, they're always amazed by the amount of automation in biochemistry and the analyzers, and that it's so busy, etc., etc. But I guess, guys, Siobhan here is an example today of a medical scientist that has gone through, and it's really good to hear her talk there about you have to know the basic principles. And I know from a micro perspective as well, you're sick of hearing me saying that things are becoming more automated, but you have to know how to do things manually.
It was funny, even today I was coming over on the bus, the Merlin bus coming over here, and my colleague was with me. And earlier this week, one of our instrumentations did break down. We had to go back to basics, getting the means, getting the standard deviations out, and seeing where assays can control or not. So it was bringing it back to basics again. So it is important. It is true though.
Well, that's really good because the secretaries haven't done clinical chemistry yet, and now we have to go through that and biochemistry was just this room full of analyzers that does all the work.
Complicates really,
Is there anything else, guys?
Ask a very quick question, Mary, and I promise to stick right after this. Do you use Westgard QC rules by any chance?
I won't be too familiar. I know hematology do for sure.
Oh, that's okay, that's fine.
I should know what biochemistry do now, but I'm not too sure. But hematology, they definitely do. Yeah.
Is that okay, guys? Is there anything else that anybody wants to ask Siobhan? And please, there is no question too, simple.
As I said, ask more questions.
Yeah, and if you don't, if there's something, we will have a bit of a discussion at the end. If there's anything that you kind of think afterwards that you want to ask specifically, or if you're too shy, you can ask. Thanks a million, Siobhan. Thank you so much.